Audiences are becoming increasingly fatigued by these endless sequels and reboots that are almost entirely unimaginative and devoid of the courage to strike out into new grounds, but instead merely rehash the same old concepts as their originals, in an effort to exploit the nostalgia that millions of fans have for these entertainment properties, simply because this strategy is provably more lucrative than taking any kind of creative risk, and will be more successful at cementing follow-up cash grabs. The Terminator franchise unfortunately fell victim to this, and has become increasingly rancid since 1991's Terminator 2. But luckily this latest edition, Terminator Dark Fate, has come to rescue the franchise. Thankfully, this film has a refreshingly different plot. This time, two are sent back in time. One to terminate an important member of the human resistance, the other to protect. Gee whiz, we haven't seen that before. The special effects are groundbreaking, and the CGI looks nothing like a PlayStation 3 game, and I'm sure you can remember all those people demanding another Terminator film. Remember those people? You don't? Well, neither can I, because no one bloody did! Terminator Dark Fate, of course, is just a terrible repackaging of the original two films, with a healthy dollop of 2019 identity politics. The film begins with an iconic scene from Terminator 2, in the psych ward, where an unhinged Sarah Connor is trying to convey her knowledge of Judgment Day. The film then addresses the fact that Sarah prevents Judgment Day. We then cut to a scene set in 1998, where Sarah and her son John are at a beach in Mexico. Even though the dystopian future was supposed to have been wiped, somehow a T-800 comes out of nowhere and shoots teenage John Connor, brutally killing him. This is a shocking disservice to the first two films, especially Terminator 2, where fans have developed a 30-year-long emotional attachment to Edward Furlong's portrayal of John Connor. To frivolously kill him off in the first few minutes of the film have outraged fans, and understandably so. It makes no logical sense for the writers to do this, other than their need to have a future saviour of the human race character be female. Think about it. Imagine they killed Edward Furlong's John Connor, only to just replace him with a different male character. Who is the future saviour? They may as well have just kept John Connor's character, and even bring back Edward Furlong himself. I mean, he is the correct age now, and perhaps not. But seriously, killing off John Connor in this way would be as egregious as if they were to kill off the Keanu Reeves Neo character in the first 5 minutes of Matrix 4. And the audacity of James Cameron to deceive fans by announcing at the San Diego Comic-Con that Edward Furlong was going to be in this film, when in reality he wasn't. It was just a cartoon of him. Anyway, we then cut to present day 2019. Two characters then arrive from the future, Grace, a cybernetically enhanced human, and the Rev 9, an advanced Terminator model. Their arrival scenes play out like a carbon copy of the scenes from the first two films. Interestingly, instead of stealing clothes to align with her gender, the Grace character steals male clothes, I guess to emphasize her androgyny even more. The next 10 minutes of the film is in Mexican, with English subtitles, as they introduce the Dani character and her family. They practically mirror the scenes from the first films, where the Terminator is just about to shoot their target, and the Protector comes to intercept. In this case, Grace shoots the Rev 9 disguised as Danny's father, just as he was about to shoot Danny. Grace continues to protect Danny as we lead into a car chase sequence. They end up on a bridge where the Rev 9 have Danny and Grace cornered. Luckily, a now 63-year-old Sarah Connor is introduced. She saves Grace and Danny from the Rev 9. The three then join forces to defend Danny from the Rev 9. It's at this point we are to believe that there is still a dystopian future, and that Danny must hold some significance in it. Now, I'd like to emphasize that the main message in the original two films was that there is no fate but what you make. In other words, you have the power to change your destiny, and in the case of the story, the fate of the world. The resolution in Terminator 1 was that Sarah defended herself from the Terminator, and therefore still giving birth to the man who saves humanity in the future. A more significant resolution, in Terminator 2, Sarah took actions to prevent Judgment Day altogether. A solid conclusion to the story. The message in Terminator Dark Fate is that there's no fate and no make. I'm aware that subsequent sequels after Terminator 2 gave the same message, but given that Dark Fate was sold to us as a genuine sequel to T2, and with the return of Linda Hamilton, it particularly undermines the legacy of the originals. So Grace tells Sarah that there's still a dystopian future, with an evil AI, this time called Legion. After everything that Sarah's been through and all her efforts to stop Judgment Day, after just being told that it was all for nothing, she responds with, those government arseholes, they'll never learn. What? I mean, what happened to this Sarah?
This whole place, everything you say is gone! You're the one living in a fucking dream, Zimmerman! Cause I knew what happened!
So we then learn that since John's death, Sarah has been hunting Terminators that continue to be sent back in time. It's not addressed as to why Terminators are being sent back in time, but hey, I guess they're being sent back because the plot requires them to be? Anyway, when a Terminator arrives, she anonymously receives text messages telling her the location of the Terminator. Each text ends with "For John." It's at this point you realise that when Sarah first conversed with Grace back in this scene, one would expect Sarah to frantically demand answers from Grace as to why Terminators are still coming through time. But no, we get,
"I'll be back."
Because cliché? So anyway, using Sarah's phone, Grace is able to determine the GPS location of where those texts are coming from. She also notices that those same GPS coordinates are tattooed on her stomach. Her sergeant from the future tattooed them on there. The GPS coordinates lead them to Texas, so they proceed to make the trip crossing the Mexican border. It's at this point in the film that Danny finally thinks to ask Grace, "Why me? Why am I the one being targeted by these Terminators?" And in response, we get the most obvious setup for a lame plot twist ever. Danny is convinced that there's no reason for anyone to want to kill her. She's not special. Sarah Connor then says, "Let me guess, she gives birth to a man who saves us all." Danny says, "But I'm nothing, a nobody." And Sarah Connor agrees with her and says, "Yeah, you're not the threat, it's your womb." Sarah may as well have been holding up a sign that says, "I'll be proven wrong later." Sarah has no reason to assume this at all. Yes, a Terminator did once try and kill her because she was the mother of John Connor, but even in that story, it wasn't just her womb that was important. It was her guidance that shaped John Connor into the leader he would later become. The writers downplay Sarah's role in the original films just to prop up this one, but then in Terminator 2, a Terminator came after John himself. Pretty sure his threat wasn't his womb. So, in Sarah's experience, she has seen the target targeted directly, and the target's parents targeted. The only reason she has to assume that Danny is the parent of the target is so that when it is revealed later that Danny herself is the future savior, we'll all be treated with a surprise. Additionally, this adds an air of gender politics. The writers make Sarah Connor assume that it has to be a man to be the strong future leader, only so that she can be proven wrong later in the film. This results in Sarah coming across as naive and out of touch, just so they can insert a blatant anti-sexist message. So anyway, Grace informs Danny that she is actually the future leader, and we are treated to a flash-forward scene where we see an older and tougher-looking Danny rescue a younger Grace from muggers. The scene progresses to show Danny rallying people up to fight against the machines. I mean, it's so ridiculous that we now have this.
"I'm gonna stand and fight! I'm gonna stand and fight! I'm gonna stand and fight!"
This little 5'1", 90-pound Mexican girl be the one. The one out of all the surviving strong alpha men left after the apocalypse, to be the only one to rise up and lead the masses to fight. I mean, it'd be about as believable if Bran conquered the Seven Kingdoms. Oh, but wait, he did. But seriously, how did we go from this to practically this?
Damn it! Listen, I lose and I burn this house down!
Once arriving at the GPS location in Texas, they are met with Arnie's T-800, the one who killed John 20 years earlier. Now, this is where you're going to have to totally terminate your suspension of disbelief. He has named himself Carl, also has a wife and an adopted son. His wife is Mexican, and of course, had an abusive ex-husband, who Carl rescued her from.
Violence against women. Let's stop it at the start. Authorised by the Australian Government, Canberra.
The T-800 is domesticated to the point where he's totally obedient to this Mexican woman, where in the past would change nappies for her son, never complaining. He's also grown a conscience, hence why he's been sending text messages to Sarah, ending them with "For John." Judging by the scene where he kills John, we are to believe that he is no different to the other T-800 from Terminator 1. I mean, could you imagine that Terminator doing this after actually succeeding to kill Sarah Connor? Is this part of Skynet's programming before they send their evil Terminator back through time?
Once you have completed your mission and murderous rampage, you must find a nice woman, settle down, adopt kids, call yourself Roger?
Anyway, he now joins the team, and the four of them devise a plan to destroy the Rev-9. The original plan was to destroy the Rev-9 with an EMP weapon, but that ends up getting destroyed after an action sequence. So the new plan is to use Grace's power source that's inside her, which will result in her sacrificing herself. This, of course, is another rehashed idea, plucked straight from Terminator 3. In the climactic end fight sequence, the four of them battle it off, ultimately destroying the Rev 9 with Grace's power source. Grace and Arnie's T-800 are killed off. In the very last scene, we see Sarah and Danny monitoring Grace as a young child with her family, perhaps leaving it open for a sequel. Now, it has me perplexed. Why would they make another Terminator that's so similar, and the few changes they did make were for the worst? Why they chose the all-female cast? Demographically, I'd assume that the bulk of the Terminator fanbase are male. I mean, it wouldn't be common for the girlfriend to be the one to drag their boyfriend to the cinemas to see a Terminator film. Realistically, it would be the other way around. Men tend to not want to see only women kicking ass in a film. And they certainly don't want to see them all old or androgynous. I keep hearing other YouTubers making excuses, say things like, "Oh, I'm not a sexist. It's the bad acting and the writing to blame. Nothing to do with gender." But is that true? I mean, 1986 Aliens had Sigourney Weaver, strong female lead, with another tough bird, but with a safe blend of strong male characters. It was a huge box office hit and a cult classic. Ghostbusters 2016, on the other hand, was a complete disaster. But do you think if that exact same movie had a different cast, instead of going full female, that it would have still been so poorly received? Terminator Dark Fate, you went full female.
Never go for
Female. At the time of making this video, the box office results are dismal, and the film is set to lose $120 million. So to the Terminator franchise, I say to you,
hasta la vista, baby.